a tear rolling down my cheek, then he knew I wasn't lying.
So are we allowed to read a poem?
Yeah, you
Sure.
certainly. I have
Just,
a slideshow, but that doesn't matter. We could do that. Sure, absolutely.
just.
Yeah, we have three categories:
Okay.
past, present, and future.
Well, this
Okay.
is a poem I wrote
Hey, Charlie, come on in.
to Seal,
Hey.
Sealita.
Oh,
So I guess you'd be
How you doing?
past,
Good.
present, and
Speaker?
future. I mean, she's passed away, but it's kind of
I think it would go in the present.
the present. Okay.
Yeah, we have
Okay.
two presenters for the present,
Yeah, okay.
and we could fit in three. That wouldn't be a problem.
And like I said, it's not long, so.
Yeah, Leanne's joining us. Randy's gonna go get her because they have to serve at the desk.
Yeah, we'll have to be at the desk. But it'll be fine. It'll work out. That says 2840.
All right.
And we're just gonna give it a second.
This is the
Oh, thank you.
18th century.
Oh, yeah.
18th century.
Wow.
18th century. I figured if you had a copy and you were following along as they're being read, this, you could probably get more out of it. Visual person.
Cordeloo is actually, the Cordeloo family is in one of my essays called String Beads.
Uh-huh.
Because I was a string bead picker for one day. My career as a string bead picker lasted exactly one day at Cordeloo Farms.
You
back
learned
in
a lot.
1970. I learned that I did not want to be a string bead.
Excellent.
That's it. But it was Cordeloo, and I actually gave that essay out. And as it turned out, one of the people I gave the essay to, I sent it out to about, I don't know, several hundred people. And one of the people that received the essay, my former biology and chemistry teacher at South Brunswick High School, said, "Jim, are you aware of the fact that my son and his wife own the old Cordeloo farm?" I said, "No, I did not know that."
That's
God bless you. God bless.
So
Is that on Cordeloo Road?
Yes. Oh,
There was more than one corner of the house.
518. No, it's Route 518, and it's now called, I don't know, like, Spring Hill Farm or something like that. But
Right.
it's right next to where Rockingham was before they moved it, closer to
Okay, yeah, I know exactly
the
what it
village
is.
of Kingston. Yes.
Yeah, there were several Cordeloos in the area. Are we getting started?
yeah, we can start now. Yeah.
Okay.
So hi everybody. We'll get started. The first one we're going to talk about is actually Henry Cordeloo. And Ed, did you want to say anything about him? Because about his poems that we don't have, or we know that he wrote some poems.
Well, funny you should ask that. What we're starting with here, this is poetry in South Brunswick, past, present, and future. And the way to start this would be with who was the first poet in South Brunswick. And in my extensive research, exhaustive research, taking hours and days and years, I came up with Hendrik Cordeloo, known fondly as Henry. He wrote love poems to his wife that have been lost, and we have none of them. But I had to honor him, so I wrote a poem. So we're kicking off the 18th century because he was a Revolutionary War hero, and so his best years were in the 1700s. So if you'll allow me, I'll read the poem, and you can get a sense, a flavor of Henry Cordeloo.
Okay.
And maybe a couple of things about the South Brunswick milieu, so you know what South Brunswick was all about.
Okay.
At the hearth of Henry Court. Hendrik Cordeloo was called Henry to his face, didn't mind a bit, or court when among friends. The man was sunshine and more than half full cups. Behind the plow in the midst of his 200 acres, or at the door of his sprawling flamboyant homestead. He was the eternal optimist all along 10 Mile Run, the proud recollector of magnificent exploits in war, the versifier of silly love poems to his spouse, the builder of a stout house on a strong foundation, the father of the younger Hendrik who finished the job. Locals and strangers were always welcome at his door, always ushered in off the 3-bay front porch, past the seldom bolted double leaf entrance, across the pine wood floors to the corbelled hearth, encouraged to find a stiff back seat in the round. The host spoke of glory days in the midst of revolution, his substituting for his dear father in '77, under Captain Moore at Elizabethtown, then Allenstown, to defend a drawbridge till redcoats stormed through. Then on to Mount Holly, Black Horse, and the Monmouth fray. Ah, the bravery shown and glory gained for the cause, but more to tell at Connecticut farms, Newark, Woodbridge, guarding surly captives at Morristown, then Springfield for a most bloody battle, survived with nary a scratch. On to Moore, guarding of wagons and dashing enemy forts. Then came the dour gloom told of the Pensy Line revolt, yet coming away with stronger resolve along the Raritan. Always more to tell, but Henry knew his audience well. A small dose of guts and gore on God's fair day of rest, just enough to capture in awe the young, the old, and free. Till next time. Now, we know that Henry had a military career because he applied for a pension, you know, the whole bit. But I'm sure that when people gathered at his house and he was saying these things, he was exaggerating. Now, to be at all these places is an extensive battle experience. So I can't confirm that he was exactly at each one of these things. But in his pension, he did mention all these places. And so if he were at all these places, then he did see some action. You know, a lot of militia guys didn't really see action. They were destroying a bridge, felling trees, you know, hauling stuff for the troops, that type of thing. But I'm pretty sure that this hero, I'll put that in quote marks, of the Revolutionary War, and a poet of not too much esteem, was a character. And so he's a colorful character in Old South Brunswick.
What made his house flamboyant? You said his house is flamboyant.
Well, because he's flamboyant,
Okay.
and his house, the way it was designed and added on to, you know, this part and then this part, and it was open and spacious and so forth, it deserves the adjective flamboyant.
Well, this is a Cordeloo house, but it probably wasn't his. That's the Cordeloo house.
Right, that's
Yeah.
a Cordeloo
A Cordeloo house,
Yeah,
yeah.
because there were several Cordeloos in the area. Yeah.
So
Now, when we
there's-
say area here, and we're talking about the 18th century, you have to keep in mind that the South Ward, which was the name for South Brunswick back in the old days, I'm talking about real old days, went all the way down to Province Line. So then, therefore, that included most of Princeton, okay, except for the Somerset side, just like Kingston, and the Windsors, okay. And so you had a huge area there that would technically be called, well, hey, that's the South Brunswick area before it was named South Brunswick. And we lost a lot of acreage when like Plainsboro came into being, when Cranberry went independent on its own and so forth. But at one time, they were part of the South Ward, which was New Brunswick's southern region in Middlesex County.
I think that the Windsors actually were, Windsor Township had a patent from the king, so it was very early on, it was its own thing.
Well, yeah, but even if you had that, okay, you had claims like the county claims. Okay, in other words, what county was it in?
Yeah, it was.
Okay,
it was
so
some-
to that province
it was
line,
some-
because there was no Mercer County yet.
Right.
And so to that province line, everything in there was called by the people who lived in the area, the South Ward. You know, so Cordeloo would be saying, oh, I'm in the South Ward. Okay, and then when 1798 comes around, then, oh, I'm in South Brunswick, or I'm in, you know, whatever. But the South Brunswick Township doesn't really come in existence till 1798.
And it's been getting smaller ever since.
Yeah, right.
And that was about the time the Windsors came into being too, the 1790s.
Yeah, that's when the Windsor Township split.
Right,
East and West Windsor.
Really?
right, right.
So,
Okay, and it's
It's
good.
impossible to say exactly, where he is. It could have been any one of several locations. You said.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
That's it. But there's no doubt that the Quarterlies have had a massive presence in New Jersey. Going back several.
Yeah, the only hint I gave in the poem was 10 Mile Run.
Mhm.
And we know that 10 Mile Run crosses Route 27 two places, not one place. And it's close to what you're talking about.
Well, I went through my backyard.
Yeah.
We lived there for many
Okay,
years. and
so
it was
we can
my
relate. We can
Yes.
relate. Okay, now
So,
we're
speaking of that, so now we're going to go to Stockton, who was in the South Ward, but it's present day Princeton. So we're going to do.
right. Oh, you wanted to do Stockton first?
Well,
You wanted to do
we don't have to.
or
Which one?
Philip Furneaux?
We
Which
can
one
do
do
for
you
now.
want to do?
Well, I have Stockton next, but I can do for now next if you want. Which one you want?
Well, you got Stockton right there.
It's
so
easy. I could go like this. and
Yeah.
go back to the
I
other.
was gonna save her because of the her patriotic slant of her poetry and her adoration of George Washington. And his time that he spent at Rockingham, 1783. So do you have a picture of Furneaux?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you go to Furneaux first? Okay, now we're going south in the South Ward. And if it weren't for the college in New Jersey, which became Princeton University, we wouldn't have too many poets in the South Brunswick area, meaning South Ward. You had a lot of Bible readers because almost every farmer had a family Bible. And of course, there's verse and there's poetic form and so forth in the Bible. And that was the basic thing when you talk about poetry in South Brunswick. That was the basic thing. But we did have some poets. And thanks to the Princeton environment, we can turn to them. And the first one I want to turn to is Philip Furneaux, 1752 to 1832. And Philip was a student at the College of New Jersey, and he got involved in some of the rabble-rousing down there as you got up to the Revolutionary War. So he was a spirited guy, involved guy, and he had some ideas, poetry-wise, that fit into the tradition of the 18th century. And the reason I picked these examples is so that you get a feel for the poetry of the 18th century. So here we have the Song of Thyrsis. Also, that word Thyrsis can be the word Tiercy. And I have a couple of notes over there on the side. Okay, so here we go. The turtle on yon withered bough that lately mourned her murdered mate has found another comrade now. Such changes all await. Again her drooping plume is dressed. Again she's willing to be blessed and takes her lover to her nest. If nature has decreed it so, with all above, all below, let us like them forget our woe and not be killed with sorrow. If I should quit your arms tonight and chance to die before 'twas light, I would advise you, and you might, love again tomorrow. Okay, doesn't that leave a tear in your eye?
Yeah.
And I believe that the turtle that he's referring to in a nest is not the turtle that we would know today. It's probably turtle dove.
Oh,
And so,
That's more. Yeah, that's better.
well, he probably thought to himself, turtle dove doesn't fit in the line, so how can I work it? So he just dropped the dove and went with turtle. But I picked this. This is one of his light poems. And usually your light verse has a lot of close rhyme lines, and you see that here, night, light, might, that type of thing. But yet he has a sort of a love whimsical type of thing in the poem. So I leave it as it is. If you have any questions about it, I don't know if I can answer them, but if you want to say anything about it.
He wrote that when he was in Princeton,
I'm not sure.
but he lived.
This was reprinted from the 1787, 1900 time period. So I don't have the original date of this, but I have a feeling this is one of his early poems.
Okay.
I'm glad to note that the drooping plume doesn't pertain to an actual turtle.
Yeah.
As it turned out, because that would not only be poetry, but it would also be biology. That would be something else.
Yeah.
Randy would investigate that in the near future, that those plume turtles.
It's a
Well,
twofer.
this is an example of poetic license.
Yes.
And you know, some poets lead the reader astray and then bring them back. But I think what he is a young guy trying to be clever. And we'll leave it at that. Okay, now we're ready for, and I have a
Now we're
picture
doing
of it.
stock.
Now we got Annis Woodnow Stock.
Okay. There she is.
Oh, yes.
Now, this is a high-class woman in the 18th century. Poetry was a bailiwick of the upper class. It was a genteel thing to do. And you take it for what it's worth, but it gives you a sense of the patriotic poem. There were a lot of these, especially with the Revolutionary War. And she admired Washington so much. There was even rumors of they could have had a love interest of some sort, but I think that's just getting carried away with the.
She's definitely a fangirl.
Yeah. And she's married into the Stockton family, which was real big in Princeton, very well established. Okay, this is to General Washington. With all thy country's blessings on thy head, and all the glory that encircles man, the martial fame to distant nations spread, and realms unblessed by freedom's genial plan, addressed by statesmen, legislatures, kings, revered by thousands as you pass along, while every muse with ardor spread her wings to greet our hero in immortal song. Say, can a female voice an audience gain, and stop a moment thy triumphal car? And wilt thou listen to a peaceful strain, unskilled to paint the horrid scenes of war? Though oft the muse with rapture heard thy name, and placed thee foremost on the sacred scroll, with patriots who had gained eternal fame, by wondrous deeds that penetrate the soul. Yet what is glory? What are martial deeds? Unpurified at virtue's awful shrine, and oft remorse a glorious day succeeds. The motive only stamps the deed divine. But thy last legacy, renowned chief, has decked thy brow with honor more sublime. Twinned in thy wreath the Christian's firm belief, and nobly owned thy faith to future time. Thus crowned, return to Vernon's soft retreat. There with Amanda taste unmixed joy, nor sorrow ever pour her heart alloy. May nature paint those peaceful walks more gay, and rural graces haunt the silent grove. May angels guard you in your lonely way, and show the path to brighter scenes above. I'm getting choked with emotion. And oh, if haply in your native shade, one thought of Jersey enters in your mind. Forget not her on Warben's humble glade, feels for you a friendship most refined.
She definitely was a fan.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
Now that takes care. I'm gonna have to get a cough drop.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe we take a break for a second.
So somebody, yeah,
Hey,
somebody,
there's little. You want some water?
no, I
I was looking for a parenthetical element. By the way, I have your autograph.
Yeah, right.
Just an autograph.
Well, it was written in the, what,
Yeah.
1700s, so I guess that's the way they wrote it. Very
Yeah.
flowery,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Anybody want
very
water?
reverential.
Anybody need
I'm
water?
fine, I actually have some,
Yeah.
use, thank you. Very, very reverential, very respectful, just filled with,
Yeah.
you know, this high level admiration. You know, also I liked, I like rhyming grove with the. I'm fine, thank you so much. I actually have a.
Charlie. Charlie. Charlie.
Charlie.
I like one thought of Jersey enters in your mind. That sounds kind
I
of
got
modern.
nervous. I got really
That
nervous.
sounds
with
a
it.
little modern.
I know, but with it, you know, if there's any thought of Jersey, then I was, you know, there's got to be something. I braced myself for some bad news. If Jersey, then I'm sorry, you're just not enjoying retirement.
So Ed, are you recovered? Because you're up next.
well, I gotta do the 19th century.
Well, Grant, I have Grant next.
Yeah,
Okay. Ready?
and I'll pass that out.
Oh, gracias.
Now, one of the things to look for is to see that things don't change very much from 18th century to 19th century. As far as rhyme, form, that type of thing. But then I throw in a wrinkle for the 19th century. And that's sort of a hint and a lead into modern poetry. And that will lead us to the present poets, okay? And then Leanne will be involved in that.
Well, then do you have Gettysburg next, and then Leanne?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, well, no, I have a couple of them
Oh, I
from
only
the
have.
19th century.
I only have Grant
I was
Gettysburg.
gonna reference Whitman there, and there's Whitman on the back page.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The Liberator.
What I did was I picked on the Civil War. And of course, Whitman is a product of the Civil War. Camden, all that stuff. And the connection here with South Brunswick is there were several people who fought in the Civil War that were from South Brunswick. And I would imagine that some of them were at Gettysburg, meaning one of the biggest battles in the war. And we had our hero Aaron Hush, and of course he was involved in a lot of stuff in the Civil War. So I picked on the Civil War for the poetry.
Okay.
And I wrote a poem a while back. I don't go back to 1865 and so forth, but I was born shortly after that.
Just a little.
So I remember reading a whole mess of stuff about this and that. Let me do the U.S. Grant one first, because you have that handsome short man up there. And we'll take care of him. U.S. Grant was a character. And I try to have that come out in a poem. It's entitled U.S. Grant. Millions gazed at you when you found it hard to focus. They trusted you the most when you could barely stand. In the midst of bloody battles, you staggered to your luck, where bursting shell and blade of steel did not find you at your best. But you were shy of sober just enough to snatch a victory from the rest. Voters swept you in, though you were short on purpose. Critics yawped at your every move, while counselors prepared to fawn. You became the one some loved to hate, but your stately party drowned them out when you calmly stood so tall and kept your crystal glass from trembling, till certain friends blurred to foes and your intentions were betrayed. At least you died the man you were, nothing more, nothing less. Thank God for boots and bourbon. So I paint him as a controversial figure, a hero,
Yeah.
but a hero who's scarred and nicked and so forth, but he comes through.
Wasn't he's been given a raw deal, I think, by history. I think he was
Um,
a lot better person than
I
what the history
think
books said he
historians
was.
treat him pretty well.
You think
Pretty
so?
well, yeah. His personal life was
Well, he drank a lot, but I don't know if that was the
yeah,
biggest
yeah.
thing.
But a lot of guys in wartime and so forth, they drank a lot.
Yeah, so,
Well,
mean, it
he
sort
was
of
around
came
so
with the
much
territory.
death, yeah, I mean, just to see that much death and live your
Yeah.
life sober must have been very difficult.
Yeah.
You
right,
know, it
yeah.
was a real challenge. But you know, the thing about Grant was, you know, being a you know, president, you know, following the war
Right.
and the nation in a state of disarray, and you know, 700,000 dead bodies, and nobody was really, you know, sure what to make of it, or if anything positive could really come of it. There was so much, you know, there was so much dissension back then. So you needed whoever that figure was, you know, it was going to be very, very difficult, as it was for a number of presidents after the
Right.
war. You know, it took
Right.
time for, you know, the South to settle down and be gotten in the bag and so forth. But Grant himself, you know, which you know, a lot of people are unaware of now, but I know that you were aware of, is, you know, Grant was a fantastic writer, and his memoirs are, you know, in the opinion of many people, literature. And but I was wondering, I never knew of Grant writing poetry, but I wouldn't be surprised at all to find, you know, that he wrote a couple of poems here and there. But he was very, very smart and
Yeah.
a very good writer, and very, very honest in his assessments and self-assessment.
Yeah, I would say this, if you have a writer who's writing prose,
Yes.
and they're writing a lot of it, they're also writing lines of verse off on the side.
They
It
say
might
that-
be
they
in
say
a diary type form
Yeah.
or whatever.
Good poets live in prose. You know?
Yeah, because they capture an idea. And a lot of couplets of lines are a capturing of an idea. You may not take it further than that, but at least you have that. You have that little kernel of something. And sometimes, like when a poet is writing, they might come up with a kernel for an idea, and they put it away for a while, and then they go back to it, they visit, and they add to it, they embellish on it, and before you know it, they have a poem. But it's very difficult to sit down and write a poem just in one sitting. You know, sort of like somebody who's writing a song, you know, and you say, oh, Bob Dylan wrote this song on a table napkin in some restaurant. It took him 15 minutes to write it. You know, okay, well, that's sort of the legend thing. But that's the rarer type of thing. Usually you have to sit on something and work on it for a long, long
revisit
time.
it.
The other thing too is, I was going to say, like Lincoln, you know, a lot of these figures, especially educated people, were steeped in the King James Bible and also in Shakespeare. Those were two foundational books for them. You know, so it's hard to read the Bible, you know, for a couple hours every day of your life for years on end, and not be influenced by, you know, by the rhythms of it, as well as by the vocabulary, and you know, just the sheer poetry of it. And then when you read, you know, the second inaugural address or Gettysburg or something like that, and you just see, you know, these are works of, you know, they're literary works, really. Of course they are. But the thing is, there's the poetry is inherent, you know.
Right.
May as well have just written it in rhyme, because it's going to be read as long as people read, you know, reading poetry in English.
Right. Okay, then I have the Gettysburg one, and then we'll get to the Walt Whitman.
Well, Gettysburg, and I have Leanne up next on the slides. I don't have anything.
Okay, well, just hold on to it then.
Okay.
You can hold on to the Gettysburg thing.
Okay.
And because I added on the Walt Whitman thing a little bit later.
Okay.
Okay, this is a simple poem. It just directly gets into the battle and the outcome of it. Nothing too deep, nothing too like double entendre or anything like that. Gettysburg. One more dream of victory, and all hearts bound in gray. Their steely limbs are flashing, but the sky is blue today. Each officer is straight-backed upon each eager steed. Fists raise keen sabers boldly, but the sky is blue indeed. Thunder from the cannons, drums from the reaper of the dead, for the reaper of the dead. Lines of lightning stir the dust, but the sky is blue ahead. Undiminished mounts the rebel yell. Unyielding holds the Union line. offensive bayonets on spring fields, for the sky is sharply blue and fine. All mad and final charges leave the pastures red on gray, save for survivors heading southward, since the sky was blue this day.
Wow. Excellent.
Okay, and then we get to Walt Whitman. I only want to read one poem, but now the thing that you want to get is to see the great leap, because Walt Whitman is that great leaper. He takes us out of that, like what I was reading for the 18th century and the 19th century. And this is like a breath of fresh air in poetry, because in the 19th century, there was so much bad poetry, really, really bad. And the thing is, he comes along, and if you look at his lines and you see the way he's writing, and like the traditional reader would say, well, where's the rhyme scheme? Where's the stanzas? What's going on here? And so he, in a sense, revolutionizes poetry. And so he's a New Jersey guy. Okay, I doubt if he ever walked through South Brunswick, but he had a tendency to walk through various areas. He was a walker. And so I'm going to do beginners. I can pick any one of these and you can hold on to them. How they are provided for upon the earth, appearing at intervals, how dear and dreadful they are to the earth, how they inure to themselves as much as to any. What a paradox appears their age. How people respond to them, yet know them not. How there is something relentless in their fate, all times. How all times mischoose the objects of their adulation and reward, and how the same inexorable price must still be paid for the same great purchase. Now, there's also another thing in his poetry, and that is, what is this guy saying? And you can imagine the traditional 19th century reader trying to figure out what this guy is trying to say. So it's not only the way he's saying it, but what he's saying. But as I say, it brings fresh air to the whole genre. Okay, does anybody have any comments on that?
Well, just a general comment about Whitman, as you said, he liberated poets, who were, slavishly attached to, rhyme schemes and
The traditions.
syllables and everything like that. And he said, quite rightly, that not everything goes in rhyme. There are some very profound and beautiful things that human beings can say to other human beings that don't, they don't fit into a rhyme scheme. So I guess being a Jersey guy, maybe he thought it was time to set aside the artificiality of poetry, but not of course that he didn't appreciate, because he grew up reading all those people. He grew up reading people like Shelley and Keats and Wordsworth and Coleridge, and going all the way back, Shakespeare, and maybe even before that. But the fact is, he realized that in modern times there were a lot of complicated things that needed to be said that were very hard to just put in a box. So he figured, like, take the lid off the box, loosen it up a little bit, and then say what you want to say, as opposed to what the language allows you to say.
Right.
And so when I was first exposed to him, my freshman year in college, I didn't know what to make of it either, because like most people, especially, we're talking about late 70s, most people were getting into poetry really for the first time. You're thinking like, well, I don't, there's no art there, what's going on here, why? And it's the age old question, like, why is this poetry and not merely prose? Why is this poetry and not prose? And the answer is that the poetry is in the lines, it's in the lines, and not everything needs to be end stopped and rhymed and counted and so forth. The poetry is in there, and obviously the challenge for the reader is to is to discover there. And a lot of people who are, way smarter than I am and much better read than I am, have read these lines by, by Whitman and pronounced him brilliant, so I'm always gonna go back to him and try to discover what, with better poetical minds than my own have found in him. And then you read Leaves of Grass and all of a sudden, just, how could you, when lilacs last in the dooryard bloom, you read something like that and you go like, wow, it's just so powerful. And there's a lot of Wordsworth, in my opinion, I think that I don't know what he read, but I'm guessing he read a lot of Wordsworth because there's like, ode intimations of immortality in early youth, like that mentality of just letting it rip, saying something really, really brilliant, but saying it freely and unencumbered by, rhyme schemes and, syllables and things like that. And it's still amongst our, favorite poetry,
There you go.
I was wondering when this was written. Do we know?
I should have looked this up, but all that I can tell you is that it's probably post-Civil War,
Yeah.
but it's before the year 1900.
Okay.
That's the best I can do for
Because
you right now.
knowing his past as being someone working in the hospitals
Right.
in Washington D.C., in the District of Columbia,
Mhm.
and dealing with those who were dying.
Right.
The last couple of lines, if you can relate it to that particular episode, which of course is universal
Yeah.
in the United States, this is about the
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of his stuff is experiential. And I love the idea of him going around and seeing the world, and taking it all in and making some sense out of it and coming out with the way he came out with it. We owe him a lot. And really, the way I look at it, I don't know if you agree with me, but the 1920s is when things really expanded as far as modern poetry is concerned.
1922.
Yeah, so there's a lag there, from the time we're talking about Walt Whitman to the 1920s. But, in other words, you got this guy, Walt Whitman, he's like a lonely voice in the wind. And then finally things burst out, but it takes decades for that to happen.
I liked Emily Dickinson.
Yeah.
I love her,
yeah.
and she's late 1800s, I think. I know she had a lot of rhyming, but not everything rhymed, and then it had double meanings.
Oh,
lots of
yeah,
times,
she
so-
was very, a mystery within a mystery.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Conundrum and a dilemma.
But Walt Whitman, my favorite is "Oh Captain, My Captain."
Yeah.
I mean, you can't
Yeah.
not love that.
Yeah.
It's sad.
I'm sure there were a few people in South Brunswick who were reading his stuff, but I can't prove that.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's probably no way, ever be, proven that he walked through here. Although for example, we know Lincoln came through by train a couple times.
Right. When he would die, they brought his body through.
Yes.
He was on the train with.
February the 21st, 1861. I was able to deduce that because he gave a speech at the New Brunswick train station, which is a slightly different place than it is right now. The church I go to, St. Peter's, is right there, and our priest, Father Jay, is a Civil War buff, a real buff. And I said, well, Lincoln gave a speech right there, February 21st, 1861, on the way to his first inauguration. He said, yes, except it wasn't there, it was down there. And I said, okay, well, you know a lot more than I do. And then of course, when he died, he came through as well. But we know that he was on his way because we know back then that, unlike now where inaugurations are January 20th, back then they were early March, first week of March. So he was coming through here and, seeing everything that we could see. But then of course, it was impossible for him to travel much. Immediately there was the war, and there were so many designs on his life and so many opportunities to kill him. And they never wanted to take a chance that, he would go to New York to meet with somebody because there were so many people. And don't forget, New Jersey didn't vote for Lincoln twice. So it was hostile territory.
Yeah.
So, coming up the train line with a spy here or a spy there, back then could be very, very fatal. Stop that train and there's the president, but we know that he did come through at least once alive, and probably only once, and once dead, and definitely only once then after, so.
Okay,
So,
now we're ready for the present.
so are we doing, so I can get Leanne now, right?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
By the way, Miriam is here. Miriam's
Hi.
in our
Hi,
poetry
Miriam.
workshop. And so far, you're the only one that showed up to represent the future. So you're looking at the future, right?
Pressure's on, Miriam.
So let me, there's one thing I have to tell Leanne when she comes in here. She's gonna have to switch, to the next slide. So let me go get her. I think she's on the
Do
way.
we continue on talking?
Well, you
While
continue
you're-
talking, yeah.
Okay,
But I'm
so we'll
gonna,
get into the present.
well, I guess she's part of the present, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay,
right,
yeah.
right,
I'll be right
but We
back.
can start with the present. Jim, did you want to go first, or John?
Oh, no, yeah, Jim, I'm.
I
I'll
had
go
his
anytime
slide
at all.
next.
Oh, okay.
Your slide's next. I mean, I could. I just have to switch around a little bit.
Oh, okay,
Hold on
yeah,
a second. Hold on.
yeah, I'm
We'll
just,
figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we might as well, instead of waiting for Leanne,
Okay.
there's Jim.
Well, these in two parts, so you could start there, and then I'll be back in, and I'll bring Leanne in.
okay. Okay, so, oh my gosh, here's the end.
The what?
Oh, well, you know what? Let's
There's
go.
Leanne now.
Hi.
Hi,
Let's
Leanne.
go back then. So, Leanne, what you're gonna do here is you're starting here with celebration,
Mhm.
and when you're done, you go to the next one. You just tap on it, and then you just tap on that one.
Okay.
Okay.
Very
And then
good.
you'll come out, and then I'll go back.
Okay.
I think I have
Hi,
copies of
Hi,
Leanne.
Mr. Z, how are you?
Fine.
Good. Hi, everyone. Whenever I do poetry readings live, I usually start with good evening, friends. So, good evening, friends. Tonight, I'm reading 3 poems that I wrote at various points in my life. This one, Celebration, was written in approximately 1985 when I was a senior at Rutgers in writing seminars. It's part of a trilogy that traced my grandmother's last year. So this one is Celebration. Dear Grandma, we went to visit you, but you were at your wedding. Oh, what a time you were having. You introduced the friends, relatives, names we knew from aging tombstones. Mr. Kazilla argued with Mr. Soder as their wives joined in a merry dance. Aunt Mary lifted her glass with a hearty "God bless America" as the bride and groom polka began. You kept the cadence of the music in your heart, tapping your worn wedding band on the wheelchair arm. You blushed and smiled as your brother Michael told you how beautiful you looked. You turned to us, not knowing our names. As we told you, the smile faded. Why, you're at the wrong party. Mother and I stood and apologized. Powodzenia, she said as she stooped to hug your old woman's body, then left your empty room filled with guests. As I drove home through the darkness of the January afternoon, Mother cried. She always cries at weddings. The next one, Ed named this one because I never had a name for it. I wrote it about 10 years ago. The words were in my head as I was driving home from Delaware with my teenage son. No longer. I saw him today for the first time as the teen he is now in the front seat next to me. All knees and elbows, lanky and lean and nonchalantly askew as he dozed and I drove. Earbuds dangling, iPod playing despite his sleep. He is no longer a child. I've tried to deny that until today, seeing him for the first time as he is. And the last one was written about 6 years ago when a cousin of mine passed away. My strongest memory of her was our families going to the shore together. So this is Tides. The rhythm of life ebbs and flows. We ride the waves of laughter and plenty and good times, and we are awash in tears and loss at others. Love being the constant. Oops, sorry, cut that.
No?
That's
There you go.
that's it. Oh my goodness, I'm nervous. One more.
Tides. There we go.
Okay.
Oops.
Oh my gosh.
We're used to
Yes,
this.
I'm
We're
so
used to
sorry.
Yeah.
Let's try this again. Okay. The rhythm of life ebbs and flows. We ride the waves of laughter and plenty and good times. We are awash in tears and loss at others, love being the constant. We traverse the tides together, tightly holding hands as we jump a wave. until one slips from our grasp. The touch, the voice, the laugh, becoming a memory collected, recollected, seashells in a vase. The tide brings them in. We race to hold them, keeping them as the tide rolls out.
Very nice. Yeah.
So, thank you for inviting me.
Okay, we might have a comment or two or a question.
Okay.
So I'll open it up to anybody who wants to ask Leanne, what it's all about, Alfie.
Well, I never thought I'd see your son at home, first of all. It's beautiful. You used to see him on a wrestling match.
Well, I'll be honest, it's his older brother.
Oh, I got it.
Yes,
Got it.
but
So-
yes, you know my
Yeah,
son
yes.
very well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And no, they're all beautiful and poignant and yeah.
These are personal,
Mhm.
experiential,
Right.
and they definitely fit the present. You know, if you compare these to what we had in the 18th century and the 19th century before Whitman, you see the difference,
Oh, yeah.
and you see the shift that has happened in South Brunswick as far as poetry is concerned. Because what we were doing before, Leanne, you weren't really here,
Yeah,
but we were
I saw
doing
the
Fresnel and Boudinot.
Right.
and
I
all
saw
that.
your presentation the other day. Randy gave me a sneak peek, so
Oh,
I was
okay,
able to see
okay.
what was coming
You know,
up.
very formal, very arch, the
Yes.
rhyme, the the meter and all that. So, again, like Whitman, yours is a breath of fresh air, and we appreciate that.
I have to say, yes, they are immediate. There's an immediacy because honestly, when I write, I can go years without writing anything worth anything. But then when the words start coming,
Yeah,
I'm simply the conduit between the words and the paper. And that's how all of these pretty much took place. It was just.
I would say
in
it's
the
very
moment.
fluent. All three of those poems were very, remarkable in their fluency. They just flowed,
Are you the South Brunswick Poet Laureate?
Me? No.
Yes. Then who is?
no, we don't use poet laureate in South Brunswick, we use the word bard.
Ah.
And we don't want to get too,
We're not too formal.
too
here.
specific.
Hoity-toity?
Nobody called a bardess. So it's barred all the way, South Brunswick, and we have more than one, so that's why we don't have a laureate.
Yeah.
Could switch off.
That's somebody for the future poets to deal with. Who's going to be the bard in the
The
future?
next.
Right.
So thank you all for your
Okay.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want
Thanks, Ian.
I want to say one thing that I learned through my writing. That senior year at Rutgers, when I wrote that first poem, Toni Morrison was the guest lecturer the second semester of my senior year, and we had to submit a portfolio to be considered for her class, and I didn't believe in myself enough to do it. So I never submitted this trilogy of poems. I never submitted anything, and I lost the chance to be in Toni Morrison's class. My professor submitted these poems to the Evelyn Hamilton Committee, and I did win the Senior Writing Award with them, which was nice. But I've always now said, regret things you do, not what you haven't done. So believe in yourselves. That's the most
Yes.
important thing.
It's important.
Yeah.
There are wins and losses in poetry,
Right.
and as long as you bat 500, you're doing pretty darn
Doing
good.
okay. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm gonna go out and answer more questions at the desk.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now with the present, Jim, because yours is so long, right? I want to save you for last,
Sure. I mean,
okay?
Okay.
And you can go ahead and do yours now. Do you want me to make copies for everybody so they can read along, or you're
Oh, I hadn't
okay
even thought
reading it?
about that. I don't think you need to really. If you want one afterward. I wrote this as a homage to Seal Leadham. You know her.
Okay,
She worked
right,
here at the
right.
library.
So her picture's right up there.
She was also a member of our Dayton Village Citizens Coalition, and she gave us so much interesting history of Dayton, but she knew a lot about the history of the whole place. So, and when I was looking at this, I wrote it on April 25th last year, so it's just been a year since she passed away. Okay, so when South Brunswick was a baby, Seal was the one who kept the baby book of our milestones and growth. Seal was the one who kept the old shots of the dusty dirt roads of the farm community we once were. She archived our township as we grew to sprawling suburbs that we now are. Seal was the one who studied the Revolutionary era houses, the Civil War era houses, the Underground Railroad houses, the post-World War II Kendall Park houses, one-room schoolhouses of long bygone eras to our huge nowadays schoolhouses. Every historic house, inn, and school had stories in their walls. The people who lived there, visited and went to school there, families, war heroes, travails, scandals, all of it. Seal was the one who loved their stories, archived and shared those stories at our library for all who wanted to know. Because without history, what are we? Thank you, Seal.
There you go.
She took the mystery out of our history. That's what she did.
right.
And now Ed does that. Does it.
Well, I
Yes.
have to say, she left a lot of mysteries in these archives.
Oh, yeah, there were
And I
a
gotta
lot.
figure out,
Yeah.
you know, Seal was great, collecting information and getting it in order and so forth. The thing that is devilish about the whole thing is she always wrote in pencil,
Oh, did she?
because that's the way she was taught, you know, with archives and stuff like that. And I can barely see what it is, much less figure out what it is. So with notes for this and that, and I have to match it up and so forth like that. So, you know, she was fantastic in collecting that stuff. And I would say that this type of thing, you know, this type of Zoom conference is because of Seal. In other words, she started this thing of collecting stuff and making some sense out of it. And so then we're taking it a step further and getting it out to the public and sharing it amongst
Would you
ourselves.
say we have the seal?
Uh,
No.
I think she would approve of this Zoom conference. She had her opinions on things, you know, she had some strong opinions about this and that, but I think she would approve. So
We learned a lot about the Weatherbill family from her, because that's a
Yeah.
date.
oh
So,
yeah,
and the Weatherbill house, and, I mean, it goes way back.
oh yeah.
Yes.
Well, thanks for sharing.
Yeah,
That
you're
was very good. Jim, you're all set. Now, I don't know about this thing. Anybody know how to operate? And I don't know where Randy is. He probably went out for a beer or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not technophobic, I'm just lacking.
Yeah, because you're on
I'm
the
not
thing
afraid of
next.
technology, I
Yeah,
just-
You're on the thing next, so if it,
Okay.
here we go, a
There,
pine
you
barrens,
got it,
you
I
got it. There you
Is
go.
that
There
it?
it is.
Is that?
Yes,
it?
and that's actually the second page of
Okay.
it.
Oh, okay, so.
It's actually the second page.
There we
Is
go.
that it?
There
Oh,
we
there
go.
That'd be it.
All right, all right.
That'd be it, and
Excellent.
I actually have a you know, cheap copy here, it's probably easier to read it straight down. And, you know, I was born in Queens and I grew up in South, didn't we really? Yeah, East Town first, you know.
A story.
Oh, there you go. Okay, that was the story. And, you know, I grew up each of my four grandparents were in a different country and also all the 1800s. And we moved here, we moved to the country, which is what they call Kendall Park in 1962.
Right.
We moved to the country, you know, and, but, you know, very challenging life. You know, at one point there were 6 members of my family from 6 different states. So, you know, I started hitchhiking to Alaska when I was 18 years old. I used to hitchhike to Alaska between semesters. And people would say, like, why Alaska? And I would say facetiously, because it's the farthest I can get from my family without having to learn a foreign language. And of course, you know, I'm just being facetious. But I was very happy to get away from all that. But once you go to Alaska, which I did 5 times, and eventually I lived and worked in the coastal range in Southeast Alaska, you're somewhat spoiled, you know, and there are very few places in your home territory that are even, you know, remotely like that in terms of grandeur. You know? So my go-to place has always been, including last week, it's always been the Kintig Ridge. I do a 7-mile loop hike up there, and I do it religiously. I do it once a month, you know, and I'm happy doing that. There's so much to see up there. But my friend Mark, I had a chance to meet somebody. Mark was actually from Poland, and Mark said, well, you need to get off the ridge and get down to the Pine Barrens. And I said, well, I would consider that. I did that back in the 70s. I would consider the Pine Barrens, but the problem is it's zero elevation. And he goes, so? And I need altitude. I need to climb. I need to be like, hopefully, hundreds or at least, if possible, thousands of feet in the sky. Well, I can't deliver that, but he said, if you ever come down to the Pine Barrens with me, which would have been for me the first time in 40 odd years. And I said, I will, he said, if you come to the Pine Barrens, you'll have I promise you a wonderful experience. So one day I said, all right, let's go. And I was, satisfied, at Mark House, Barrack, closest Mark. And we went down there. We had a glorious hike. And now I've been going back there for the last 4 years. Whenever I can, I'll go down there. And but I became enamored of the Pine Barrens. This very small area, the Park and Preserve, just outside of Chatsworth, and that is my go-to place. But there's so much to recommend. There's standing water, there's flowing water, there are eagles overhead and northern pine snakes, and big insects that bite, and but anyway, so I said, I'd like to write about it someday, and took a number of people down there, and my dear friend Renata said, you should write a poem about the Pine Barrens. And I said, well, it'd be like 500 pages long, and she said, well, you're right, you figure it out, and you figure it out. So I said, okay, I'll try to do that. And so my modus operandi was, instead of writing something really long, which I'm incapable of doing, this is by far the longest poem I've ever written in my life. And but I said, if I take it in bite sizes and I just do it over time, if I'm happy with the part, then I'll put it in the book, and then I'll move on to the next, and move on to the next. The one thing I will say though is that I had a list of colors, I had a list of animals, I had a list of course, of all the senses. And basically I had a checklist of things that I wanted to incorporate into the poem. And the poem is not finished until everything that I had on my checklist is in the poem. And of course things changed a little bit. And I thought it would be 10 parts, but it turned out to be 14, but that was enough. Anyway, I know it's a really long introduction to the poem. But anyway, the poem is called The Pine Barrens, Impressions. And the reason it's impressions because I didn't want people to think it was a definitive poem on the Pine Barrens. There's no such thing as a definitive poem of anything. So, but it's The Pine Barrens, Impressions to Mark Malinowski and Renata Pugh, 2023. 1, a half mile in and well off the trail, I was sure I was standing where no one had stood before. 2, as I move through the dark heart of the forest in the cool embrace of the motionless pines, I can barely make out the early sun, a constantly fracturing and reconstituting circle of light. 3, I wade through the underbrush and bracken, my legs wet to the knees with dew. I angle towards the clearing beyond the trees, feel the heat more with every stride. 4, to be aware as I traverse the bog of the vast primeval lake below. I acknowledge silt, soil, gravel, sand, and clay, the give and take of what I can and cannot see. 5, so many dead trees, some down for decades, once odds-beating skybound strivers, they now lie in silent gratitude to the mosses that assist their return to the welcoming earth. 6, a salt and pepper pine snake slides across the white sand trail, disappears into the forest, leaves artful curves in its narrow wake. 7, I find myself back in a maze-like fen, blackwater streams, white cedar stands, swamp pink, gentian, asphodel. Beyond the high-brush blueberries, a tangle of honeysuckle, the fragrant air blent with the sulphurous reek of loam. 8, a short, thin trail fringed with bracken leads to the edge of a sunlit swamp, a trio of red bellies basking on a log, and beyond, a great white egret stock still in the fetid muck. 9, overhead, a sudden drone, a small plane, yes, but where? I look to the sky, obscured by pines, wait for it to come into view. 10, A rustling amid cattails, the egret too in flight. I follow its ascent to the azure gap. There is nothing left to until there is nothing left to see. Then return my attention to the teeming swamp to find the turtles, like the heron, gone. 11. On and off these trails since just after dawn. What I will remember it all, I will remember well. Mosquitoes, deer flies, brutal heat, in the business of 1,000 birds against an immense blue, impossibly cloudless sky. 12. A breeze from the south, the scent of burning wood. Somewhere far off, the forest is or was aflame. 13. A glint of fire on a blackening pond. The sun, a hazy, burnt orange cirque, admonishes in its slow decline. 14. I marvel as an eagle quits its bough, watch in silence as it sets its course, then disappears into the soft gray sky above the dark green verge of evening. Those are my impressions of the pine barrens.
Oh.
And the red bellies are, I mean, we call them red belly cooters or red bellied turtles, of course, and that's one of the, there are about 5 or 6 species of turtle that predominate in the pine barrens, but that was the one.
Is it an endangered species?
No, not, yeah, I mean, we have about, I think I counted 88 in one day. I saw 88 in one day, so they may be endangered, but they're not endangered in Chatsworth. Although it should be said, like I used to, when I go up on the Appalachian Trail, for many years I went up, Sunfish Pond, and about 7 or 8 years ago, I saw maybe 30 northern water snakes in one day. And I said, wow, I mean, that doubles my snake limit for a lifetime, right? And then the next year I went up and I said, come with me and I'll show you where the snakes are. And we saw all these snakes. And the next year I said, come up, I'll show you some snakes. You like snakes? I'll show you some snakes. On the northern side of the pond in the rocks where people build the cairns, 5 years later, I couldn't find one. They were gone. They came and went.
Yeah.
That was the year I stepped on a rattlesnake. A different snake problem altogether. But
You had somebody raising their hand on.
oh yes. And
Any comment on the,
There was somebody raised their hand.
Yeah, I don't see it in here though.
Okay.
Maybe they
They may have lowered
Yeah.
they don't have to raise their hand, they can just speak.
so yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because a lot of people aren't familiar with the red bellies. It was
Right.
kind of like the turtle that Fernand mentioned when the first thing we think when we hear turtle is, well, a turtle, and then of course he was talking about a turtle bow, which made complete sense with the bow and the plumage and so forth. But anyway, red belly cooters, but they also call them red bellied turtles. Red bellied turtles, painted turtles, snapping turtles, spotted turtles. You have a lot of different turtles down there, and some of the turtles there, it is a unique biome. So some of the turtles there really are endangered. They really are. And I know that wood turtles are, you don't see that many wood turtles there. And and of course, when we were growing up, some of the older people here, we used to always see that box turtle once or twice a year, and it was a real thrill. And quite frankly, it's been decades since I've seen a box turtle. And so they're always.
Are they the
quite
ones with
exciting to
the
see.
giant claws? They look like they're like prehistoric claws that come out.
Well, I mean,
Or is that
the
a- is
snapping
that-
turtle, the
that's a
big one, the
snapping
snapping
turtle,
turtle,
okay.
yeah. Oh, that's the poem. Snapping turtle. And there are. I mean, you could see 5 species of turtles in Cranberry Stream opposite Brainerd Lake. The stream opposite Brainerd Lake. My sister and I go down there with 2 loaves of white bread on hot Sundays in the summertime, and we have 15 people watching us, feeding all these turtles. And what we do is we incentivize the little ones with the bread, and then a half hour later, we've got turtles the size of hubcaps coming up and bouncing all the other ones. Musk turtles as well. Musk turtles, all mud musk turtles, but they're there as well. And but they all, I guess they have like a turtle détente. Because they all seem, there's food for all of them and they all seem to be doing well. But once you once you go from Brainerd Lake over the dam and under Main Street into Brainerd Stream, you're basically there for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So, there are turtles there that are 100 years old, but they came over the dam 100 years ago. You don't want to be coming over the dam if you're 35 pounds. It's not good for business. But once you get there, you don't have any predators at all, and you have two silly older people feeding you bread every Sunday all summer long. So why go anywhere else?
Yeah.
But
What you're implying is that we have places in South Brunswick, and I'm waiting for your Palm on Pigeon Swamp, to follow on the
Yeah.
footsteps of this one. And then Burnett Swamp. So we have these swampy areas, and they tell me that at one time in Jersey, this going way, way back, the Pine Barrens actually stretched up to our area. It was a much
correct.
larger area than it is
Yeah,
now.
because I believe that the terminal moraine was like New Brunswick area. New York was under 600 feet of ice and snow during the Wisconsin ice. When that receded, I mean, imagine New York City under 600 feet of snow. I'd actually like to see that. But the thing is, so when the ice receded, let's put it this way: while the ice was there, everything south of the ice was subarctic. Because we define the Arctic, by where the ice is. So when the ice was here, this was subarctic.
Right.
Of course, when I lived in Alaska, it was a beautiful thing, because I became used to this beauty. But if you go down to the Pine Barrens, there's a reason why it's deciduous trees north of there, and it's very, very green down there, almost dangerously, densely green, down there. But it's true, And if you look at, I always tell people, I take people for hikes up on the Kittatinny Ridge a lot, and we all my hikes originate at the Delaware Water Gap. But I tell people, when you're looking at the Delaware River, you're looking at the last trickle of all the glaciers that have ever come down from the Arctic. That is it. All that, that's geologically speaking, that's one of the oldest features in this part of the world. It's the Kittatinny Ridge, and then you go to the Palisades. We do have an extinct volcano in Sussex, New Jersey, Rutan Hill, up in Sussex County. But these are the oldest geological features. But anyway, it's quartzite. It's very, very strong, but the weight of the glaciers, eventually it found the weakest point and it pushed through. That's the Delaware Water Gap. And this big tongue of ice going down there. Now everything melts, but the lengthy ravine created by all those, glaciers and recessions and glaciers and recessions, that is the Delaware River. And indeed, as some of you know, some people will go down to Cape May Point and they will look for Cape May diamonds, which are big chunks of quartz. They go wading off Cape May Point and they come up with big, diamond-like rocks. And of course, the Cape May diamonds, they call them, are actually chunks of quartz that were knocked out of the Kittatinny Ridge of the Delaware Water Gap and carried down the Delaware River over the millennia. So that's it. So all the quartz you see off Cape May Point is from the Delaware Water Gap, And by the way, I was up there last week and I get some really incredible specimens of petrified wood, If I thought people knew what it was, I would leave it up there, because I'm one of these people, I believe very strongly in, leaving nothing but footprints, take nothing but pictures. But I see them as little, things that I can teach with, and I found some really interesting pieces of wood, which I don't hoard them, I pass them on to people and I explain where they're from. And to most people, they're rocks, but if you look very, very carefully, you'll see that they're, it's millions of years old, it's basically.
Well, thank you for sharing this. What this inspires us to think about is all the possible things we could be writing about. That not only we're talking about the South Brunswick area, but Jersey has a lot to offer, and this is an example of it. So thank you, Jim.
Well, thank you. And I might just, I might just have to write something on pigeon swamp. I might just specialize in writing poems about swamps.
Yeah, well, I told Randy, we have to walk through Pigeon Swamp and, get inspired historically. So you could join us and you could get inspired poetically.
Yeah.
And,
As an ecologist, can I join as well?
Sure.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So we'll form a group, and a posse.
I don't want
And
to
we'll go
take
through
any
there.
more time reading, but
If
I
you
do,
all
I
get
have
lost,
extra
go with us
copies.
together.
I have extra copies of snapping turtles, so before everybody leaves town, I'll just give.
Okay, let me run them off.
Oh, no, I have a pile.
Oh, you got,
Oh, yeah.
okay, fine.
I came prepared, which is unusual for me.
The DNR Canal is also very inspiring.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah, that's what, this is a canal poem, this is a canal poem.
I wrote
Oh, you're
one
welcome.
about walking the canal during the pandemic. It
Yeah.
saved my life.
Does anybody know Joyce Greenberg?
Oh, yeah, we have her in the archives,
Yes,
yeah.
Joyce is a dear friend of mine. She lives out in San Diego right now, but Joyce just sent me her new canal poem, which is
Oh.
called Towpath, which is about walking the towpath with her late husband
Right.
Gary and also
It's-
Penelope Scamley Shot.
Oh,
and
yes.
other
Yeah,
people like
yeah.
that.
That's a great place to
Yes.
walk and
Yeah.
get
It's
inspired.
really-
As long as there's not too many people on the towpath at the same
3
time.
miles from
That could
It
be
can be
Brinkstown.
very distracting, yeah.
It's 3 miles from Brinkstown to Little Rocky Hill, and it's another 1.5 from Little Rocky Hill to the Kingston Bridge. So it's 9 miles, bridge to bridge to bridge and back. And but I grew up swimming in that canal. I grew up swimming in that canal and rope swings and looking for the fabled wild cows down there in the floodplain and but when you're swimming in there and you next thing you know you feel something on you and it feels like a piece of seaweed but it's actually like a 6-foot water snake that it cures you of a lot of fears.
Yeah, or increases the number of fears.
Snakes seem to be a recurring theme here.
Yes, well, there are 23 species of snakes in New Jersey. So the thing is, but it's like anything else. It's okay if you're terrified of snakes. You probably won't see one unless you go looking for them. They won't go looking for you. Let's put it that way. But
The snake thing has been around since Adam and Eve.
yes.
So it never
They get
leaves.
such a bad rap and they're fantastic.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
bad
see,
rap.
the whole
yeah.
enmity thing doesn't work for me because I
Yeah.
like them. I like them.
Maybe.
And, but the thing is, we only have two poisonous species. Obviously, the copperhead and the eastern timber rattlesnake. The biggest snake, which appeared in the poem, the northern pine snake, grows to maxes out about 10 feet, between 9 and 10 feet. It's easily our biggest snake. Rattlesnakes, obviously, that's the one snake in Jersey that can take you out. But but they're relatively small. When you see, they're like very unprepossessing. When you see a rattlesnake, like in the woods, the first thing that impresses you is it's a rattlesnake. You should be impressed. But the other thing is that they're quite small. They're not very big. They're fat, but they're not.
They're an
very big.
endangered species too.
Yes, they are. Yeah, and it's funny because they tend to be in just a few places. They're seen in a few places, but I know up in if I go up on a really really hot, dry day, I mean so hot like it's 100 degrees, I'll go up there. If they say it's gonna with the heat index, it's going to be 105 degrees. That's when I go hiking because I know nobody else will be there, and it actually maximizes my chance of. Well, you won't see a bear in 100 degrees, that's for sure. But the chance of seeing snakes is greatly improved, and you just have to be careful. But they're unaggressive animals. Rattlesnakes are very unaggressive. But if I'm unaggressive too. But if somebody drops something heavy on me, like a really big boot, it'll get my attention, and I might be slightly less aggressive than under normal circumstances.
Right, but your bite is not poisonous.
My bite is my literal bite is not poisonous, but
Right.
my figurative bite,
It borders on.
mild mannered. And this I hope you enjoy this poem. I don't want to take any more time, but I
Thank
hope
you.
that people will read this. And by the way, this is the canal. This is the canal here. You can see the canal in the middle of the poem. So I guess at some level it's a visual poem.
Right.
But but anyway, I hope it inspires you to be nice to snapping turtles. And my last snapping turtle rescue was my sister and I fed the turtles for 2 hours in Brainerd Stream, and all these people are saying, "Look, honey, look at the turtles. These people are feeding the turtles," and all the kids were looking at the turtles. And I got in the car feeling really good about myself. And we're driving back down 130 to take Sis home. And there's a huge snapping turtle, like this big, right in the middle of 130, and people are stopped in every direction. It was right at the intersection, I think, Dye Road and 130. So that's what I do. You know? So pulled over on the side of the road and I went right to the middle of the intersection. I did a 360. I've got this, you know. And I picked up the turtle, and of course, the ideal way to pick up a turtle, well, you don't pick up a turtle by the tail because obviously you'll damage its spine. But the thing is, for a smaller snapping turtle, you get it from the back like this. But they're so slimy, it's really hard if they have any weight to them. So you very, very carefully go to the sides, knowing full well that the snake can access your fingers if it wants to. And it's really, really mad, it's going to make the extra effort. So I was walking a 30-pound snapping turtle across the intersection, and people were looking at me like I had some kind of disorder, you know. And it's just turtle love, you know. And I walked it right through the intersection, and fortunately, about 150 feet down on Dye Road, there was a retaining pond. So I put it in there knowing that the turtle was going to be back in a couple hours to do what it intended to do in the first place, except I wouldn't be there to save it. But you know, if the turtle's listening, and I know it is, it's just, you know, you can't fault me for, you know, at least trying.
Right.
So if your life got hard after that and your shell got soft or damaged, then it's on you. You know?
Okay.
Let's have a tendency to eat swan eggs too. That's a problem down at Treadle Lake down in Heightstown. I don't know which species of turtle does that, but they're eating the swan eggs. Well, just anyway, just a
Yes.
food for thought.
That's true. You know, they're voracious, you know, and there's a reason why the snapping turtle is really, really big and all the other turtles nearby are quite small by comparison. It's because the snapping turtle eats first and often. And it could eat an entire loaf of bread. A snapping turtle will eat one whole slice of bread at a time. That's how big the heads are on these. You know, it'll come up, it'll eat it, and then I'll say, "Wow, did you see that?" And 10 seconds later, it's waiting for another one. And it just eats slice of bread after bread after bread after bread. So it's you know, it's a beautiful thing. But you're right, they eat a lot of things there, and the other turtles are, shall we say, respectful of it, but probably also, you know, suffer, you know, in terms of reproduction from the voracious snappers.
Okay, thank you, Jim. We now have the future poets,
Okay.
and you have something. To show
Well,
there.
I have,
think Cedar is
I have-
first, right?
Let's see. The next one I have is cedar.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Cedar,
Yeah.
are you ready?
Sure.
Okay.
Hey. So this is the second poem of a trilogy about a relationship. From smile to simile. And I have not edited it since our last session. So this is a work in progress. I mean,
It's a
always work in
future poem.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Loving you is like standing on a busy train platform. Awkward, cumbersome luggage cradled in my arms. A rushing man bumps into my shoulder. Get out of the way, asshole. I mumble, sorry, but he's already long gone. Children waddle past, holding their stuffies, reaching up for their mother's hands. Everyone else's suitcases glide smoothly on the tile, but mine are bulky and writhing, like cats being lowered into a bathtub. Others run into me and murmur their apologies, then look back in confusion at this frozen stranger. I have nowhere to go, because where I want to go does not exist. Perpetual stillness with aching muscles, emotional isometrics.
Okay, now, you see how far we've gone from the 18th century poetry up to Cedar's example here. Jim's also, Walt Whitman, etc. So you see the progression of the poetry. And the interesting thing is, what direction are we going in? Because I would say this, that a poet is very good at asking questions, contemplating the universe, etc., and asking questions. But is always challenged and always finds difficult the answers. So it's very difficult to find answers in a poem. But to raise those questions, those significant and important questions, and I think this is a good example.
Yeah, it's like it's an existential statement.
Yeah.
And
I like the imagery of the cats.
Yeah.
You spelled it.
Yeah, it's hands.
Yeah, spelled it.
Where did the cans come
Yeah,
from?
the cans.
I don't know.
That was it.
That's a.
Yeah.
Did you put
I
that
had
in
to type
there?
it in. Yeah.
Spell check.
Oh my God.
That
Yeah,
was-
that's me.
That's the thing. Spell check will actually be doing our help.
I couldn't
Yeah,
copy
yeah.
and paste.
Yeah,
I had to
that's
type it.
See, if Randy wrote that poem, he would put cans in
Cans,
there.
yeah.
Make that the
Yeah.
feature
Oh, I
of
mean,
the
I
poem.
often lower cans into my stuff. So.
Yeah.
See if they
And cats.
float. Yeah.
Well, yeah, they show the train, so that's definitely poetry in motion, I guess.
Yeah, oh, there, I got it. I
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
And it's, I like your train of thought.
Yeah, there we go. We have a play on that.
Yeah, there you go. But that last 4 lines, then look back in confusion at this frozen stranger. I have nowhere to go because where I want to go does not exist. Perpetual stillness with aching muscles, emotional isometrics. That just, that paralysis that constantly, that gives birth constantly rebirths itself. Just the isometrics, the developing the emotional, the muscles developing emotion of stasis, static paralysis, that. So yeah.
Great.
Like
Did
that.
anybody else have any comment or question they want to ask Cedar?
Well, I'd like to know more about this.
Well, you said it
No,
was
you
a
can get
trilogy,
into
right?
the,
Right.
state of mind, which is really good. I like it. It's-
Yeah, and I like Jim's use
Spirits.
of the word existential.
Yeah, well, the word exists is in there, so it kind of triggers that. But the whole, there's a crisis there,
Yeah.
and, but frozen and perpetual stillness and emotional isometrics.
Right.
When you do isometrics, you stand in place and you work the muscles against one another.
Yeah.
And the muscles actually develop. So it's kind of like a self-perpetuating situation, with just
And we can't imagine an 18th century poet writing this. We just can't do it.
No.
And so, when I asked the question about progress, we're opening up. And this is an opening up of poem. So thank you, Cedar.
yes.
Thank
Did you have another one you wanted to read or just that one?
I think just that one was what we were.
Okay,
doing.
great.
Yeah.
Great.
I was just gonna say, to go back to Whitman, Whitman, people don't really, we understand that, but Whitman, how Whitman liberated. And I remember the first time I actually studied with Allen Ginsberg, if you can imagine that. I studied with Ginsberg, and because my teacher was a friend of his, my teacher owned the Eureka Poets Cafe. So he said, if we get all 9 people in the class to agree to go every Wednesday at this specific time to New York City, I can deliver out, because Al was living upstairs. So that was it. But of course, the first time I read Ginsberg, I didn't know what to make of it. And then I remembered Whitman, and I realized that in the same way, I idolized Eliot Ness, that Ginsberg idolized Whitman. And that's his rhythms and his freedom of language and everything was greatly informed by that.
Right.
So, but that's what Whitman did. So when we see these wonderful, fluent poems that are liberated from rhythm and rhyme schemes and syllable counts and all that,
Yeah.
we can credit Whitman for doing that. Now people did it before Whitman, but he did it in a very, very big. He did it in a very, very big way and became famous for doing it. And so we do. I think all modern poets, whether they admit it or not.
Yeah.
I know I feel that I do.
Well, and he's a Jersey guy too.
He's just, yeah, I mean, say no more.
We have to sell that.
So,
That's a selling.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, Miriam, are you ready?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a slide for you, Mary. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. You know what? I did edit mine from our last meeting, so I
Okay.
can read that version from this thing.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Marion.
We'll fill in our own pictures and use our imagination.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
It's
I
running
believe
wild
in you
already.
guys. Uh-huh. Um, all right. So this is called Limbs. Come closer, sigh the leaves, and I do. My limbs can only embrace, reach for galaxies and gather, space like skates knotted. Grief unwinds as I do, leaping beyond my wounds. Arm in arm, we surrender. That's the confidence. Thank you.
Could I show you to read it one more time? Yeah, I would love to hear it one more time.
Yeah, I can read
It's-
that one
it's-
more
it's hard.
time.
Yeah, I have a slow brain, you know, so it's just like, but yeah, it's.
Don't know we have copies.
Oh, in my,
Might have a rough draft.
yes.
So while
that's
you're
fine.
reading it again, let me run off the thing. That, oh wait, you have copies.
You did it, yeah, I didn't
Oh.
realize.
Oh,
So you,
Yeah, in our workshop,
Oh, wow.
we tear these up and,
Oh, thank you so much.
well, we go all over the place.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Let me run off a couple more copies.
This is what Ed did to mine. So.
Oh, wow.
it's like surgery, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't
So we're gonna read the final version, or would we see the draft?
Yeah, that is the
That's
one
the
that I worked on. You don't have the final, but I
Okay,
do.
that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it will be. Good attitude. Limbs, come closer, sigh the leaves, and I do. My limbs can only embrace, reach for galaxies and gather, space like skates, knotted. Grief unwinds as I do, leaping beyond my wounds. Arm in arm, we surrender.
Skeins? Did you say skeins?
That's how I pronounce
Like,
it.
like yarn?
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's right. I just wasn't
thank
curious.
goodness. Yeah.
No, I was thinking, because I was trying to get the imagery, you know, I
Yeah.
saw that, you know, it made sense, it had to be skeins.
Thanks. I was set on that word. I didn't
Yeah.
want to part with it.
No, it's a good word.
Did you get a copy?
Oh, I do. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
good guy.
You got
Good
one.
guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what the plans are, with the poetry workshop, we have, outlets where we're trying to get some of our poems published. And that's ongoing. There'll be more outlets and so forth. But the thing that we're going to do is come up with our own anthology. And I would like to do that on an annual basis. Right now, we're plodding along so that we don't have much on the production line. You know, as far as we consider it's a done deal. In other words, this poem is ready to be published. We're still working on stuff. So the thing I would encourage, and this would be people listening in on the Zoom conference and people here, any poem that we read tonight, okay, that comes from us. Okay, not the ones from Fresnel, not the ones from Boudinot, Stockton, and so forth, but from us. If you want to donate those to our anthology, we would be very appreciative of that. Okay, so your poem, okay, of course, your
Did
poems,
Yeah, I did.
and Jim, your stuff, and whatever, and Leanne's stuff.
Yeah.
And I think we can come up with a dynamite anthology.
No, I have a copy of
Oh,
it.
Now, an anthology is quite a few poems usually. But we don't have to worry about the number, the quantity of it. We're more concerned with the quality of it. Okay, and I've coined the phrase chap booklet instead of chapbook. Because we might come up with 15 poems. Okay, so that's good enough for whatever anthology we're going to come up with. And we don't even have to use the word anthology. But in other words, keep that in mind. As you're writing, through the year. By the time we get to the end of the year, then for the beginning of the next year, that's when we'll decide and put together that first one. So there's no rush, no pressure on anybody, because poets don't like that rush and pressure stuff.
Does everybody here know another poet in South Brunswick or no? I mean, sometimes people do. You know, I know people who write, you know, who write well, but they're too shy. They say,
Yeah.
"Well, it's not really a poem," and I go, "What do you mean it's not a poem?" There was a girl at South Brunswick High School, and she was one of my students for 3 months. And at the end of the 3 months, you know, I was transitioning out of the class. New teacher was coming in, and I was going to another long-term assignment. I was just holding the fort till another teacher came in, and her last assignment was a personal essay, and it was so, and she was struggling in class, but she wrote this essay, and I read it, and I said, "God, this is a poem." I mean, it's a, you know, it's a basically a big block paragraph. You know, there are the, you know,
Like a
margins on the outside.
prose poem?
Yeah, but she didn't see it as that. She
Oh,
saw it as a 250 word
Mm.
personal statement but it was so beautiful and so heartfelt and so poignant that I said, you know, I'm not even gonna ask for her permission. So what I did was without changing anything at all. I did not add a word, I did not subtract a word. I just rewrote it as a poem. I rewrote it as a poem, you know, and I worked really, really hard to get, you know, things, you know, on the far right side over here that I thought needed to, you know, get a certain amount of attention. And I wanted it to look like a poem. And I said, you know, your little essay, I mean, to me, it was like a prose poem, you know, but I took the liberty and I rewrote it as a poem. She's like, what? And I said, yeah, I rewrote it as a poem. And
She
goes,
sued you.
yeah, and she said, "You'll be hearing from my people." I said, how's that for a poem? You know? She
Yeah.
goes, "That's a best-selling poem, not for you, for me." No, but she said, "Well, I'd really like to see it someday." And I go, "It's right here." I already had it for her, and she was really impressed. I said, "See, the thing is, you know, it's just your writing style." I said, "You really took me by surprise because, you know, I know you're struggling in this class a little bit, but it's mostly because you don't turn the work in on time or you don't turn it in at all. But when you do work, it's very, very impressive. I mean, you really have a gift for language and, you know, and it's very, very fluent." And I said, all I did is, you will see, I did not, here's what you gave me and this is what I gave you back. I didn't change anything. I didn't add anything. I didn't subtract everything. Every word is yours. But what I did was I kind of liberated it from the borders, you know, the margins, and I put it in such a way that, you know, to emphasize certain words, you know, I kept tweaking it, and it also was very, very dense, you know, which is good. I said it was dense, and I said by giving it space to breathe, you know, the emotions, you know, were liberated from it, and she really liked it. She works over at Wawa in Dayton. She said, "I really like it." And I said, "Well," I said, "would you consider going to our librarians, Miss Manganella and Miss Hanasowski, and we have a poetry pillar in the library right now." I said, "You should go to them and say, you know, would you consider this for the poetry pillar?" And it ended up on the poetry pillar.
Okay.
Yeah. So I felt really good about that, and I gave her a book of poetry. I know not everybody likes Louise Glick, but I gave her Louise Glick anyway. And I said, you know, read some poetry, and, you know, maybe this is something, you know, something you want to do. But you never know where the poems come from all over the place. You know?
Yeah, we don't want to step on the toes of anything that's going on at the high school.
Yes.
But we're open to anybody in South Brunswick
Yes.
and the surrounding area who wants
Yeah.
to contribute to it, get
Absolutely.
involved. I mean, that's fine. We have a core group now, and we're going very strong. And I'm happy with the progress.
Mhm.
And so we'll just continue on. And this is an example of what can come out of this type of thing.
Did Connor come more than once or no?
Oh yeah. Connor's been here. He actually had a poem with a turtle in it.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's right here.
And
Oh, really?
it had something to do with that theme of
Oh yeah. I
Uh,
actually gave him a copy of 100 Poems by by Seamus
Seamus
Heaney.
Heaney.
Okay.
Yeah, well, you know, Seamus and I corresponded for 10 years. I was a young poet. I wrote to Seamus, and he wrote back, and I wrote to him again, and he wrote back. And the first one,
Wow.
you know, time was from Ireland, from University College. Second time was from Harvard. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take a chance and send him some poems. So I sent him some of my poems, and I waited, you know, and he was very, very kind, you know. And so anyway, of course, eventually I met him, and we became friends to the end. 1995, my pen pal wins the Nobel Prize for Literature. So of course I stopped writing to him, you know, because I was already taking up too much space, and I told him that too. But he died very suddenly, August 30th, 2013. And but I bought 2 copies of this book last week. I gave one to Connor. He really liked it. But I also, whenever I buy that book, I always email Catherine, his daughter, and I always say, Catherine, I bought 2 more copies of the book. But because she's the editor, she likes that. But anyway, I can't recommend that book enough. It's so beautiful. You know? So,
Okay.
Okay, I think we're
Okay.
done.
Yeah.
oh,
Well, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Worked out great.
Thank you.
My workshop people, we have to decide on the dates for May. For the,
Okay.
well, okay, so, you know, I got my
wow,
calendar
but
with me.
I'm glad Connor came through. You know.
Yeah, see that line in the middle, then I save a turtle in the middle of the road?
Yeah. Look at that. Yeah. I got said.
You probably inspired him.
Sometimes I think.
Okay, good night, everybody, and
Bye.
see
Thank you
you
so
next
much.
month.
Yeah.